All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome to the March 22nd, 2023 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin tonight with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I got my workshop and town board meeting mixed up and made it a very short silent prayer. Sorry about that. We don't do the silent prayer at the workshop. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the preceding meeting, March 8th, 2023.
My seconded.
Any discussion? I'd just like to mention in reading the minutes, I discovered, so we had a public hearing on the decision to go to make the Chapman Corner a historic site. And my original intention was to abstain, and I talked about that. And the reason I was going to abstain is I've been working on with the developer to have him improve and restore the Cartwrights Inn across the street. So I did find a developer. He's put in a purchase offer. I believe he's closed on that purchase offer. I haven't talked to him since. So very excited about that. But because I'm involved in that project and it's immediately next door, my intention was to abstain. The issue is the vote was like half an hour later because we had all the hearings and then we called the vote. And by the time we got to the vote, I'd forgotten to abstain. Had my vote made a difference, we could rescind the approval and revote. But as it was unanimous, it's a difference between a 4-0 vote and a 5-0 vote. So to me, it's not worth going through the whole process of rescinding the vote. So, but I just wanted it on the record. And hopefully in the future, I'll have better memory, but it's going the other way because I get older. So can't always guarantee that. Any other comments about the minutes? And hearing none, please call the roll.
We forgot as well, so it's
Yeah.
no hard feelings.
Was a long time after.
We try to remind you, but we forgot on our end too. Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have special use permit application number 2023-008. JJ Bugs Inc., 375 Clay Road, to operate a pest control business. Do we have a representative from JJ? Can you please come on up to the mic, introduce yourself, talk about your relationship to the project, and then describe the project. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. Name is John Mochner, Mochner. I am the owner of Mosquito Joe of Rochester, along with another company, Customs by Jay, that is a smaller side business of Mosquito Joe. Mosquito Joe, we provide mosquito, flea and tick service to the greater Rochester area, basically right out to the Indian Reservation near Pembroke, and then right out to Ontario, down into Canandaigua, etc. So we've been operating for a number of years, and we are looking at purchasing 375 Clay Road and moving our operation there. So just a little more centralized for us. Building fits very well. Touching on the second business, what that is it's a shoulder business to the mosquito control. And the reason that it is so is I came up with a better mousetrap as far as customizing the vans and vehicles that we use. So I now actually build vehicles or upfit vehicles for other owners of Mosquito Joe. We are a franchise across the country. So I'm installing water tanks, plumbing lines, some electrical pumps and stuff like that. There's no oil changes, tire changes, vehicle maintenance as per such.
So looking at the site, this is between Interstate Battery and the RGE substation.
That is correct.
Okay.
And so the vehicle customization, that's just for internal customers, if you will, for other
That-
related businesses. You're not,
That's correct. No, I don't
Not a
advertise
general.
and, you know, people drive by and stop in and stuff like that. No. People call me up. I got a call from New Jersey today. I got a van coming in from New Jersey.
Mhm.
So it's just, I build maybe up between 5 and 10 vehicles per year.
There's a note in the packet. I don't know, maybe you talked about this at the workshop from Kevin Wilson regarding parking. Do we know, is Kevin on the line? Do you know?
Yes, I am.
I was just wondering what your concern was with the parking.
I guess I was on the impression that Murray's was staying there. Is that true or not?
Murray's towing business?
Yes, so the owner of Murray's Towing, Bill, he's downsizing his business and he's actually asked me if he could rent back some of the space after the purchase. So
Okay.
that is in the works.
Uh-huh.
But I know he has extremely downsized his fleet.
His
So
business.
yeah, he's just looking to rent some office space from me for his dispatcher.
Okay.
My only concern was with, you know, if it was Murray's Towing with the parking of their vehicles, but it sounds like this gentleman will not have very many patrons coming to the building. So I don't think there is an issue with the parking at this point.
Okay, great.
That's correct. We have no, like, zero walk-up business whatsoever. Everything is done remotely. We schedule services at residential and commercial properties.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
No, had a question about the storage of the pesticides and chemicals, but our fire marshal has already put that in writing and it's going to be covered. So I'm all set.
Correct. I do report to the DEC. They have everything on file where everything is being kept and how it's kept.
Thank you.
So we've kind of already done it, so I'm just gonna officially open up. We've already been talking about it since they're kind of related. We'll also be hearing comments for special use permit application number 2023-009, Customs by J, 375 Clay Road to operate a vehicle customization business. And like I said, obviously, we've already had some discussion about that. Do you have any questions for us before I open this up to the public?
No, I'm willing to answer any questions. So anything you need to know, I'm right here.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this special use permit application? Any other questions from the town board? Anything online? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit applications number 2023-008 and 009 for JJ Bugs Inc. 375 Clay Road and Customs by J, also 375 Clay Road. I'm just looking, we do not have a rewritten, okay. Is there anybody who wishes to, anyone wish to make a motion with regards to application 2023-008?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve special use permit application 2023-008 JJ Bugs Incorporated, 375 Clay Road to operate a pest control business.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I will make a motion to approve special use permit application number 2023-009, Customs by J, 375 Clay Road to operate a vehicle customization business. I would like to add the condition that it does not become a commercial customization where you're having patrons, customers come in and perform. So, or, you know, do the work so that,
Yeah.
because again, I don't think the site really is suited to that type of business.
No, that's correct.
So,
I do all the work inside my shop, so.
Second,
any further discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, I wonder if you could be a little more specific on that limitation.
So I guess I'll say, a prohibition on, that the permit for the customization does not include for a full retail operation. So if you, during the public hearing, he was saying that he does customization for essentially for the
internal
franchise
business
holders, other stuff like that. What I don't want to see is a walk-up garage, you know, where basically customers can just come in and do other customization, because again, that if you look at that site, it's not well suited for retail traffic.
Right. So you're saying just limit it to the pest control,
It's basically not open to the public.
right?
The customization work, the vehicle customization, it's, yes, related to that. Now, again, I guess we could say, or other fleet business. Right, because if he does some other franchise, I'm not trying to limit it to other franchise, but go ahead.
Maybe if you just want to use the word retail sales, like on-site retail sales, I'm cool with
Right.
that. That's fine. Because like I said, everybody, they contact me, bring their vehicle, drop it off, and I have it for a week or two. It's in the
Right.
shop and
But it's all related to the pest control stuff.
the vehicles that I build, yes.
Yeah.
So there's no retail, like I
Right.
said, there's no big open sign in the front window and, 50% off and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think I like your idea of that it would be limited to either the pest control business or a similar fleet.
Right, okay.
Um,
So that's how we'll write the limitation, that the customization business is limited to the pest control or similar fleet work, not, again, it's not
Open to the public.
open, it's not include retail, open to the public.
That's fine.
Okay?
Yep.
Any further discussion on that? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations and welcome to Henrietta. If you want to email me at supervisor@henrietta.org, I can hook you up with the local Chamber of Commerce.
Wonderful.
If you want to do any kind of ribbon cutting or anything like that, or need any assistance on getting started in Henrietta,
Appreciate it.
just let me know. Okay?
Mosquito net cutting, I don't.
I'm sorry.
Well, instead of a ribbon, maybe a mosquito net.
Mosquito net, yeah. Gotcha. Appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Am I free to go?
You are.
You're good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
No charge.
I guess you'd have to say no additional charge, right? Since he paid his application fee. Next up, we have special hearing for variance request for, oh, I'm sorry. So this is, yeah, so it's an Article 10 vote and variance request for 1063 Erie Station Road for a 2-foot rear setback of a garage, whereas 40-foot rear setback is required. This was originally under zoning board application number 2023-021. We're hearing it here because it is related to a historic property. Do we have a applicant? Yep, see him back there. So introduce yourself, your relationship to the project, and then give us a description of what you're looking to do.
My name's Tyler Keller.
Valerie Fleischauer.
We own 1063 Erie Station Road, and I'm also doing the design for all the renovations and improvements to the property.
Do we have the site plan? Okay, so as I understand it today, there's just a driveway that you can see it on there. It loops around, comes in off of Erie Station and exits onto Middle Road. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're looking to put in a garage. From the looks of it, it's going to have the looks of a barn. Is that the style you're going for?
Correct.
When you do this, is that loop going to continue out to Middle Road, or is it going to stop there?
So right now, the loop kind of stops not much past where the porch is on the side of the house. If you were to draw a line
Right.
screening up on there, that's about where the driveway stops.
Okay, so it doesn't make it all the way currently to,
It does, but it's not maintained. and It's
Not
not really
maintained, it's-
usable.
okay,
And I don't intend to make it usable in the near future.
okay. And then currently the driveway spans the property line, is that correct?
Correct. on
Which is
both-
why you're gonna need two of the
Correct.
variances to reduce to zero.
Yes.
So basically, I know we've discussed this at the town board, but just for people's edification in terms of, so under the Article 10, which we use to approve or deny any proposed modifications to the exterior of a historic property, especially those that are going to have an impact on the appearance. We have the ability to grant a variance if that variance is key to the protection of the property, and it goes into a number of things in the consideration as to what does that mean to be key to that. And so when we looked at it, to use a perfect example, so he's got two variances with regards to the garage itself. One has to do with the placement. Actually, there's three. One has to do with the placement within the rear setback. This is located in the rural residential area, which has a 40-foot setback. If he does it without a variance, it pushes it up to where there are a number of mature trees and pushes it up close to the back of the historic property. As many of you, a number of you voted for and also are aware of, that we consider the green space around these historic properties to be important. So by granting that variance, it allows the garage to be further back from the house, 38 feet further back, and therefore better protects the historic view of the house. Now, as an example, he's also asking for a side setback, which from a protection of the historic property standpoint, if it's, I don't remember what the exact, I think it was like a 7-foot difference. It really doesn't matter from a preservation of the historic standpoint, whether it is or is not within that side setback. So that's really more of a zoning board question. They get into whether it, they can grant it based off of whether it has impacts on the rest of the neighborhood, that kind of thing. But from a historic standpoint, that really doesn't affect it. So that's why of the 5 variances, the only one we're really looking at here is the one with the rear setback, because that one does have a significant impact. The driveway, if the driveway had to shift 5 feet or more to the left, again, it wouldn't have a big impact on the historic nature. It'd have an impact on their pocketbooks because they'd have to shift that driveway, and that's a, kind of a pre-existing condition. So that, but again, that's a zoning board question, not a town board question.
Becky, can you actually go to the first page of the other PDF? Yep. So that, second page, sorry. So this is the existing condition right now, which shows the way the current driveway goes off of our property to the west.
Right.
And the existing trees that we're trying to remain to keep the look of the current and historic property.
And then, so there's the rectangle that's just to it's in the center of the page at the very top. Is that yes, that one, is that the foundation, or is the foundation of the old barn over to the left?
They're both existing foundations of
Existing
two different
foundations.
old barns, yes.
Okay,
Two different old barns, not on our property.
Right,
And no
Not
longer,
Even on your property. Okay.
no,
no longer standing either.
Okay.
right, although the silo is correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's our intention to have that all remain.
Right.
Although it's
It-
not on our property, so I can't
Right.
weigh in on that.
Questions?
So I think one of the pictures there, did that show how you imagined the barn? The garage?
Yes,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
First picture in that PDF is how it currently looks.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
then next one down is how it would look with the new garage.
right. And it looks like you're looking to design a garage that's kind of in keeping with the character of the house.
Correct.
Yep.
And if it's just being a rendering right now, I haven't gotten
Mm-hmm.
too far into it, so I don't want to spend too much time until I know it's good to go, but I do not have a photo in this packet unfortunately, but the barn that was demolished by where the silo was it was painted red, a
Mhm.
brownish red with a black roof. I would be willing to do the same colors with the garage to mimic what was originally there, but for now I'm just showing it matching the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the others, but I'm fine with either color scheme. I'd be curious what the Historic Site Committee
Right.
says on that. Unfortunately, the letter from the Historic Site Committee talked about the site plan, but it didn't talk about the architectural style and rendering, and in it, it did say that that the final design was gonna come back to them. So just so you're aware, in talking about that, we're not actually gonna be able to grant the Article 10 and variance today. Because I'm just making sure that is how it ended up, right? Becky? That we don't have the resolution on for tonight.
That's correct.
So what will happen is the zoning board decisions will just be, if it's approved, it'll be approved contingent upon the final approval of this Article 10.
Okay.
I was ready to vote on the site plan. The problem is because we don't have the opinion from the Historic Site Committee on the architectural aspect, we needed to wait. And I was hoping that they had already received and reviewed these renderings, but it doesn't sound like that was the case. So. Questions? Any other or additional questions?
Great project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just, I think you've done a great job with that property, and it's always, it's great to see historic homes being preserved. So I know that it's difficult to have updates and adaptations, but I appreciate your commitment to trying to preserve as much history as you can.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not gone quickly. There's a lot of thought that's been put into it
Right.
to make sure that
Absolutely.
it's not just tastefully thrown together. It's-
Mhm.
I assume in the one view where the trees aren't there, you did that just so we could better see the barn?
Yeah.
Cause in the one rendering, like the front tree is missing.
Oh, that tree will be removed shortly here.
It's really close to the
It
house.
It
Yeah.
is encroaching on the house and is
Oh,
where
okay.
the septic system needs to go.
Okay,
I will say that Tyler did a presentation in front of the Historical Site Committee and they were very impressed with how, and Tyler is also a member of the Historical Site
Right.
Committee, which we love having him there because he's very knowledgeable. And they were very impressed with what he was doing and how he was doing it. And, how much time and energy he's put into it. So I think, it's no one was against the project on the
Right.
Historical Site Committee, so.
any other questions?
That's a great project.
Is there any input from the public? Coming up?
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. I'm Gary Goodrich. I chair the Historic Site Committee, as you all well know. We've been working with the homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. Keller, since June of 2021. When they applied to have this property designated as a historic site for Henrietta, and then the various other things they've been talking about doing. The house was originally the home of earlier settlers to Henrietta, the Shermans, and then later was sold to the Search family, both names which are very well known in Henrietta. We had reviewed the plans of the property. Tyler showed us at a presentation last fall. At that point, he wasn't applying for permits. Therefore, we did not do a vote on, but we gave him suggestions which they have incorporated. The entire committee, and I tried to poll them today before this meeting. They all remember the renderings that were shown and are good with that. But we haven't done per town code an official vote on that yet. We appreciate the continued efforts, the Kellers, to restore and maintain this historic property in Henrietta. And they're continuing to work with us and everything they do. Like I said, Tyler hadn't presented the actual building plans, just the building site. We're good with the building site because it's closely located to the old farm that was there as he can get it and stay within the confines of his property. It will show the silo off the back corner of the barn. He's going to make it look like a barn with characteristic materials of that period the house was built. So this will be, he's going to get us renderings and potential building plans for the barn to our next meeting in April 3rd, so that we can move this forward for them. So, thank you, unless you had any questions.
No, like I said, I do also agree that, and you can tell just from the foundations, right? When I look at the historic stuff, it was quite common for the agricultural and utility structures to be clustered like that.
Yeah,
And so
and a
I think
little way
that-
away from the house.
Correct. So I think
Right.
that fits in real well with the historic nature of the property. So
Thank you.
any other comments from the public? Is there a need to keep? Oh, I'm sorry.
Come on up.
Hi, I'm Sam DeSalvo. I live in 876 Middle Road. I'm a neighbor of Tyler and Valerie. There's no debating the fact that he needs space. He hasn't got very much space around the house and that. And I think the way things look here, it'd be very inviting for the neighborhood and for the house itself. It looks like a landmark house, landmark building. I would be all for this if he was to be allowed to do it, so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to come in. Is there a need to hold the special use permit open, or excuse me, the public hearing open?
Are we getting additional information?
We will be getting a letter from you can argue whether it's additional information. It's the formal version of the information we already received.
Well, that makes it fun, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I would just err on the side of keeping it open then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will be closing this session, but we'll keep the public hearing open till the next meeting, at which point by then we'll have a formal letter from the Historic Site Committee and we'll be able to approve this. I've heard no negative comments about it at all. So and again, I've written the approval resolution, but we realized that we were missing in the letter from the Historic Site Committee. It did not address the architectural rendering, and it talked about that it would go back to the Historic Site Committee, except the Historic Site Committee is an advisory board, not a board that can make a ruling. So that's why they send advisory opinions to us and we make the ruling. So that therefore, we were talking about the possibility, do we make it contingent upon coming back? But then if it's that, why not just do it all in one fell swoop next week or next meeting, excuse me. So sorry about the slight delay, but any other questions? Then hearing none, I'm going to close this session of the public hearing, but the public hearing will resume. What's the date for the first April meeting, Becky?
This is the Thursday meeting, Thursday, April 13th.
Yeah, we're on Thursday.
Thursday, April what?
April 13th.
April 13th. We will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public hearings. Can I get my first resolution?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow board members, I have resolution 6-113, 2023 to authorize bills payable and any associated contracts or agreements from March 17th, 2023 through today, March 22nd, 2023.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-114, 2023 to declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review of an update to a mixed-use development social use permit, adding single-family attached dwellings located at the northeast and southeast corners of Lehigh Station Road and East River Road.
Seconded.
So this is a mixed-use development that they've already had there, the original plan. So this is the Edgewater Apartments. They're already building the apartments. They were doing a phased approach to the development. The southern side was originally going to be all industrial space, but they actually, under the mixed use, still had some residential space. And they proposed or are proposing putting in attached single family, also known as townhomes. So these would be to own, not to rent. And basically, if you look at the southern portion of this mixed use development, it's actually two separate parcels. It was parceled out during a previous development. There is a creek that runs through and kind of separates it out. So this is in the smaller portion that's separated out by the creek. As part of this project, they have also they'll be extending the East River Road sidewalk to take it from essentially across from Eagle View Drive, which is the road for the lodge, and they're going to bring it all the way down to Lehigh Station Road. That project is actually being done in cooperation with Monroe County when they are going to be doing the improvements to the East River Road corridor. So starting some of the initial work should be starting very soon if it hasn't already begun. And they'll be making improvements primarily to the intersections, but in a couple areas, they'll be adding like a center turn lane for East River Road. They're trying to address the congestion there. One of the things that does happen, this is within the East River Road seeker mitigation corridor. So for all the traffic that they put onto East River Road, they will contribute to a seeker mitigation fund that basically we're using that to pay the town's portion for all these improvements so that it's not coming from taxpayer dollars, it's coming from the developer's pocket. So this is showing the site plan, the current, the color coding, the blue is the residential use, the green is the civic space, the orange is the industrial space, and the red is unusable. So most of that's wetlands, although one portion of it is it was declared by the State Historic Preservation Office as a culturally significant or historically significant area in terms of relics. I suspect it was either an old farmhouse or a Native American village, something along those lines. They're not disturbing that. That's that. Like I said, it's just to the east of the property also wraps around an existing house, so it's just to the east of that house. So so the light blue that's south of Lehigh Station Road, that's where these townhomes would be. Any questions? Okay, so again, we're declaring intent to be lead agency, which basically means we're going to lead the seeker process. There will be other involved and interested parties who will give us feedback, and then we will make the determination from an impact standpoint. Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 6-115, 2023. It's call for a public hearing on a proposed local law to amend the town code to address commercial composting.
Second.
So the town code currently allows agricultural composting in the rural residential district. The distinction between the agricultural and the commercial composting, in agricultural composting, either the input by organic biomass material has to be generated by the farm, or the output mulch has to be used on the farm. You can't take external organic biomass, turn it into compost, and then turn around and sell it off the farm. That's considered commercial composting. When we were looking at that, in theory, these composts could go into any commercial or industrial zones. And whereas there are a couple industrial zones, don't know that there's any commercial zones, where there's a couple industrial zones where composting might make sense. There are large portions of the rural residential farms or rural residential district where it also makes sense. So we're just looking to add that. So we're calling for a public hearing for a law that essentially adds commercial composting with a special use permit, because obviously we wouldn't want to go in right next to somebody's house. So that's why it goes in as a special use permit, requiring a special use permit. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have resolution number 6-116/2023 to authorize the advertisement of bids for sports court ceiling, painting, striping, and equipping.
Second.
So you may have seen, we've already started the old basketball courts and tennis courts at Veterans Memorial Park. The pavement was in really rough shape. So we pulled it all out. We were originally going to mill it out. But our highway crews said that they could use excavators, get it out there quickly, thus saving the town. I think it was about somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000. So they did that. They've put in the stone. They've started compact the stone. They'll be doing the paving once the asphalt plant's open. Because of the price, we need to go out to bid to do the sport court ceiling and painting the court, striping the new courts. So there'll be 2 basketball courts, 2 tennis courts, and 4 dedicated pickleball courts. So we are enlarging it by about 40 feet. And then that will also include putting in the equipment and the interior fencing. The exterior fencing we'll take care of ourselves, but that's what this one's for. Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 6-117-2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court General Trades Package Contract D to Javen Construction Co. Incorporated.
Seconded.
Any discussion? So I'll just make a comment about all the packages. In total, they came in pretty close to the budget. You know, there was a delay due to COVID for the start of this project. When we then were looking to restart, we updated the budget based off of today's pricing and such. And so far they've come in pretty much on budget, so. Any questions? I will also add that Javen Construction is the general contractor who did the library, so. They did a really good job. The only problems we had was a skylight because of the size of the skylight. Because of that, I told the architect, design me a building that doesn't have a skylight. You actually have to have light, so we're doing it as what's called a clear story, where the center of the building is higher. So they're vertical windows that let light into the building, this interior of the building from above. So we meet that code without having to build a skylight. Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 6-118-2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court Plumbing and Fire Protection Package Contract E to Landry Mechanical Contractors Incorporated.
Second. Any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-119-2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court Mechanical HVAC Package Contract F to Pipitone Enterprises LLC.
Seconded.
Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-120-2023 to award the Henrietta Town Court Electrical Package Contract G to Kaplan Schmidt Electric Incorporated.
Second.
So I'll note, the resolution accepts the bid, the low bid, which was $849,000. When we first put the bid specs out, we didn't realize that we didn't have in that the included wiring for the fire alarm system. So that what we've done is we essentially had our West Fire Systems, they're our vendor of the fire alarm. They did an estimate as to how much it would cost to put that in. And so we're just adding that dollar amount to this, not to the bid itself, but to the maximum amount that we can pay Kaplan Schmidt. We decided, we realized that like just before the bids were due, there was no way people were going to be able to update their bids. So we decided whoever won, we would add that allocation. And again, it's based off of the recommendation from West Fire Systems, which is our alarm vendor. So what you'll see is in the resolution, the bid cost was $849,000, but the amount not to exceed is $899,000. That accounts for that additional $50,000. Any questions? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-121/2023 to authorize the purchase of a new generator for the pump station located at 5,000 East Henrietta Road.
Second.
So this will be our first Generac for pump stations. When we first started doing pump stations, Generac was more in the home business, and their commercial generators weren't quite as reliable as the Kohlers. That's since changed. We actually use Generac for most of the buildings. And so there was a significant savings by going with the Generac. So that's what we've decided to do. Any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 6-122, 2023 to add a one-day marriage officiant license fee to the previously approved 2023 town clerk's office fee schedule.
Seconded.
So what this basically just means, New York State now allows, if you want to officiate your child's wedding, for instance, in the past, you used to have to go online, take one of those courses, minister courses, essentially get ordained, type of thing. What New York State now allows is you can do a one-day single event. So basically you would, after whoever it is that you're marrying gets their marriage certificate, you would then say, I would like to be the officiant for that wedding. And then you'd be approved. As soon as you've officiated that wedding, essentially you're no longer licensed. But if we're going to offer that, so of course, the state pushed it out to the towns. So since we'd like to be able to offer that to our residents, to be able to do that, we need to add it to our schedule. Any questions? Coming up.
Hi, my name is Peter Cook. Thank you for hearing me. Based on what you just said, so you're saying that a marriage could be performed by an officiant that's not actually ordained ministerially wise? Pardon my language, pardon my lack of
Oh, that is correct.
verbiage there. But you're saying that anybody could get anybody married at this point.
They have to
Apply for that special permit and be approved.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yep. Any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-123, 2023. Whereas Tina Thompson was awarded the Velma K. Moore Award from the New York Library Association and received $1,500 to be donated to the library of her choice. And whereas Tina Thompson selected the town of Henrietta Public Library to receive the $1,500 to be used for the acquisition of furniture. And whereas a check in the amount of $1,500 was received by the library directory. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Tina Thompson and the New York Library Association for their generosity.
Second. So obviously, huge thanks, both congratulations to Tina for being recognized and receiving the award. And of course, for her generosity in donating that award to the Henrietta Public Library.
We have the best town historian. Can I just say
I know,
that?
she's amazing. She's amazing. I mean, she's been at the library, involved in the library. What did I say? 30 years last time we talked.
Wow.
And I mean, she's just so involved. We're very fortunate to have her. She really is. She's great. She deserves the award.
Absolutely. Any others? Anything from the public? Hearing none, please call the roll.
I just feel like it's important for me to say that she's actually been on the library board for 40 years.
Is it 40? I couldn't.
Holy cow.
Thank you.
Wow.
But I'm sorry, that's not what I was
She's
asked to
only
do. I just
25,
felt
so-
compelled.
Right. Started when she was 1.
She had to have.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-124, 2023. To approve the creation of a special district fund for water district construction expenditures and funding.
Seconded.
So as we were getting started and received our first pay app request from the work on putting in the new water main on Middle Road, we realized we don't have a water district fund anymore. I think it was 21 years ago, the town turned the water district, the support of the water mains over to the county. And so last minute, we kind of realized, oh, we need to create the special district fund so that when you create a new water district and there's going to be charges, you have to track all those all the expenses and then track those charges that then go out to the people in the district. So that's what this is doing. Any questions? And was very impressed with the speed at which our contractor put in the water main. I just drove down there the other day and it's all down and spray painted green.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-125, 2023. To return interest earned in 2022 from the capital project fund to the general fund.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-126, 2023 to authorize and or ratify the following agreements executed between March 8th, 2023 and March 20th, 2023.
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, make a motion for resolution 6-127, 2023 to make appropriate budget transfer.
Seconded.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-128, 2023 to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 6-129, 2023 to revise the agreement for buyback of street lights from Rochester Gas and Electric.
Seconded.
So just yesterday, or maybe it was, well, I guess he called. Yeah, he called Monday while we were in workshop. I got back to him yesterday. They found a clause in the contract that this is RG&E that their attorneys objected to, that they apparently missed. So we had already approved this contract, so we just need to reapprove it. It was basically to conform with their practices. They don't actually put the paid amount in escrow. They just don't cash the check until they've reviewed everything. So they don't bother to do an escrow statement. So any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 6-130, 2023 to accept and approve insurance proposal as negotiated by one group on behalf of the town.
Second.
So, prices came in, I mean, some of the insurance has gone up, some of it's come down. One of the things that we did is change the way some of the property insurance worked. And that was able to lower our costs in terms of just how the property is valued, whether it's assessed value or replacement value or that type of stuff. So but that's about it. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any additional discussion items or comments from the public? Coming up.
Hello, Town Supervisor and the Board of Henrietta. My name is Brian O'Hara, and I've been a Henrietta resident for over 30 years with my wife and family. And tonight I'm here to present some information from a group that I'm a member of called New York Citizens Audit, which has done an extensive audit on the statewide election voting records and basically the condition and the health of the voting system in New York State. And the NYCA team has come up with some very alarming results that they found through their research. And it's they've conducted some exhaustive research using public sourced information via FOIL requests from the state, looking at their voter database records for the state and the county level. And so they've conducted extensive research, taking hundreds of hours of time. And so it's unique research that you're not going to find. Thanks. Thank you.
Sure.
This is a copy of our sort of flagship report from the analysis that we've undertaken. But at any rate, so this is information you're likely not going to hear anywhere else. So as a Henrietta resident and a member of NYCA, I really felt compelled to address the board tonight. First of all, just to let you know about the findings, because they're so alarming. I think it's my duty just to let the town I live in know about this. But in addition to that, there is a remedy that I will be mentioning later on about this. And I probably need about maybe 13 to 15 minutes of your time to go through the results of the findings, if that's okay. So anyway, so who is New York Citizens Audit? We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with about 1,000 strong members statewide, using various talents, all volunteer, in the effort of assembling, analyzing, publishing, and now basically promoting the research findings that our group has discovered. And, our only commonality is that we're just New York citizens from, they're just concerned about the state of our elections. Okay. So there is a group out there that's just doing whatever we can do to let this information out there. That's the good news. The bad news is the findings on the report. Basically, what we've seen is that there are critical errors in the voting system where registration of voting totals do not reconcile between various state agencies, but they should, namely between county and state totals. There is a massive amount of irregular registrations that are active in the system. Many of them are being used to vote. Various state officials presented with this data have mostly ignored or altogether rebuffed the results that were presented to them. So that's a one very big disappointing factor out of this that we need to consider. Why should we trust New York Citizens Audit and the results that we found? Well, are we just coming up with crazy numbers, making them out of the air? Well, this is really the critical part of my message, because this is the part that I really want you to consider. This is the important part. Are these numbers for real? Because the numbers are so shocking, frankly, that the real key here is if they are real, because if they are real, they really jump off the page and they really demand for some action somewhere that somebody takes on this. But so, yes, I mean, there's three reasons I can say why we can trust this data. First of all, the analysts from the NYCA who have analyzed this have their own internal peer review system that they do. Everyone's sort of looking out for each other and has to answer to each other. Okay. Secondly, NYCA has opened themselves to scrutiny to the public agencies they've delivered this data to. Okay. And basically NYCA has done the hard work of assembling all this data and analyzing it and publishing it, both in reports and in our website. It has a lot of data on the website. And so we've done the hard work, and we're just basically asking the state agencies to do the easy work of spot checking and looking into their own data that they provided to us. Thirdly, NYCA will make available the routines that they've used in their database queries so that anyone else can do the same thing we've done. So we're basically open and encouraging other groups to do similar type of work. And we feel like we're confident in the results and all that. We're not perfect. We're open to suggestions or any criticisms or any findings of data. But quite honestly, there's so much there that we think that there's sufficient amount to call for a state end audit, which is basically the goal of what we want to have here. And that's what we're basically going town to town and county to county, asking and requesting that a resolution be signed, that a state end audit be done. Okay. So yes, we can trust NYCA that their data is real. So what is the data? What does some of the data say? You know, are there election vulnerabilities created by irregular registrations, and are they being exploited? Personally, I'm a network security engineer, so I'm very interested in these kinds of things where, you know, security protocol has to be followed, and we see the lack of that happening, and that's a very disturbing thing, and that's part of why I got into this in the first place. So what we see right off the bat is that over registration, which is an obvious sign of that irregularities are there. It's basically self-evident. 6 of the 62 New York counties have over 100% registration for the voting age population. Okay, topping the list is Nassau County with 155% registration rate. Think about that. That's a disgrace. Almost every county has over 100% registration for certain age categories, most notably the 100-year-olds, but also there's a category of 30-year-olds also, which is very interesting. These are on page 4 of the report, by the way. So you would expect that even 90% registration rate would be an exorbitant amount, okay? But using the criteria of 100%, if we look at the 6 counties and we look at the other counties that had categories of over-registration, we have a number of 625,000 excess registrations statewide. So that's just assuming that 100% of the population actually registered to vote, which is that would be outrageous. Next, we see on page 4 of the report that 7 of the 62 counties that submitted the specific data, the state voter rolls were higher than the county rolls by 1.9 million. This is one of the most astounding numbers on the report, in my opinion. By law, the counties are the only ones to create and modify the registrations and are supposed to feed changes quickly to the state roll. How could it be off really at all? But by that much, 1.9 million? This speaks to 3 things. One, as far as state registrations are concerned, the left hand does not really know what the right hand is doing, and no one is policing this egregious discrepancy. There is no control or baseline. Second, contrary to state law, 55 counties failed to comply to the request for this information. So the totals really could be higher than 1.9 million. But it speaks to a brazen disregard of election officials to follow the law and comply with the citizens who pay their salaries and have entrusted them to safeguard their precious elections. So let's move away from the statewide totals and look at the individual records themselves, okay? Now, NYCA is sort of taking a safe route, and we've only really looked at the egregious sort of prima facie, in your face kind of irregularities. Okay, we're not looking at the dead and gone people. We're not looking at the illegal aliens. We're not looking at people that are listed in the National Change of Address database. There are certain categories that we're not even looking at. We're just looking at the ones that have irregularities on the face of it as you scroll the database itself. And so, so here's some of the numbers that we found. We found 51,000 blank addresses. And these are all reasons why these would be considered irregular registrations that are on the roll. 51,000 registrants had blank addresses. 27,639 were registered after the cutoff date. 70,000 registered after the last voted date. 19,712 age discrepant registered voters. Either they were underage or they were over the age of the oldest known living person in the United States. So just to be really safe, that's what the plumb line was. 4,724 were under the age of 12. So how they got registered in the system is really hard to fathom.
Where are you reading these?
Let's see. What
Your numbers
page?
aren't matching what I'm reading in this report.
There's two sections. One is the number of invalid registrations and the number of invalid registrations who voted. Let's see. So look at page 2.
Oh, I found it. Okay.
Mr. Schultz. Yeah.
The regular registration. Okay, I was looking at the one that voted. Okay.
Sure. There's 1,488,000 purged with no purge date. Now, this is massive and creates a problem from several standpoints. One is that 30,000 of these were used in the election in 2020 in what they studied. So some of these are being used. None of them should not have a purge date because you can't really tell which of their dates looking back, which votes were valid and which ones were not. So that's a huge problem. Another one is that there was 1,106,000 registrants that were registered on federal holidays when the federal, when the state offices were closed. A totally inordinate number. It's about 5% of the entire voter roll.
Where do you see that one?
That's on page. Three. Mr. Schultz, yeah. And out of that, 762,000 were January 1st, which is an absolute crazy number. And
What was that number?
762,000.
Right. So I mean, I'll just let you know, a lot of computer programs default, if they don't fill in the number, they default to 1-1.
Yeah. However, that's a very important date in the whole registration process, and they're all supposed to be down there because otherwise you can't tell.
And is
if
this
you-
in the state data or in the county data? That's an important distinction, because to my knowledge, the state data isn't used to actually vote. It's the county data that's used to vote.
Mhm.
Do you know which this is
I
in?
don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's county? It's county, okay. I have some other fellow NYCM members here with me tonight. So, well, there's different reasons that have been posited as to why that number is there, but really it should be an accurate date, and the state has had time to make any changes. So it really is something that shouldn't be there. The other thing is, it's interestingly, a lot of these January 1st dates tie into cloned records, which is a whole nother issue, very nefarious in its presence in the database. But a lot of them are tied to that particular clone records, which are also another class of irregular records. But I mean, the thing to note here too is that you wouldn't expect these registrations on federal holidays. And indeed, most counties only have a handful. Some counties have an extremely high number of them, which points to the fact that a lot of this data in the system, a lot of this these irregular registrations are really New York City based and Buffalo based. So they're really kind of the biggest damage is being done in those areas, but we're all tied to the same system and there's some discrepancies that run throughout. Let's see. No, as far as the clones are concerned, those are special records that have no source record attached to them. So, you know, they're a separate state ID number, so they can be used in voting, but they have no source record attached to them. And during the canvassing efforts that NYCA has done, along with the requests up for the counties for information on those records, we've never received any records from them on these clone records. And all the people we've canvassed so far, and I guess in the hundreds throughout the state, every single one confirms the fact that these records don't belong in the system. They're invalid.
And again, are those cloned records in the state or in the county?
The clone records are definitely in the state. I'm not sure about the county because remember, there was a discrepancy between the county and the state, the 1.9 million discrepancy. So I don't have the information as to how much is valid on that, but I believe that was from a look at the state record.
What I'm just curious about is then how does someone vote using that state record if they're not in the county record?
That's a good question. You know, there's many ways that voter fraud can happen.
Well, I'm not even talking about voter fraud.
Yeah.
Well, so
Well, that would be
presumably
voter
you're
fraud.
saying that this is an illegal entry. My point is, how do they cast that vote? Because to my knowledge, if you're not in the county roll, you don't cast a vote.
Right.
I'm not aware of somebody being able to vote at the state, for instance.
Mhm.
My knowledge, they're all vote at the county. Now, if I'm wrong about that, let me know. But
Yeah.
everything I've seen. And the other thing is, so all of us candidates, well, for me, it's every 2 years. For them, it's every 4 years. We go door to door.
Mhm.
And if you're also a committee member, then the other years you're going door to door and we get the voter rolls and we know, in other words, those people are there or not there. Now,
Yeah.
again, sometimes like a door I knocked on the other day, the woman was there, her husband had since passed away.
Mhm.
And that, as in like a month earlier. So the roll wasn't updated.
Mhm.
But you know, so in looking at these numbers, you would think that we would see these irregularities where there's these people who aren't there.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I, for one, am not seeing it.
Well,
I
that's
can
good.
account for everybody on those rolls.
Mhm. That's good. You know, I mean, and if you look at, and if you go on our website, one of the pieces of places where there's data is there's a state map where you can click on the county. You can click on Monroe County and see the actual numbers for Monroe County. It doesn't get to the town level as far as that goes, but for Monroe County, there's 7,700 of these clone records and 233 were used to vote in the 2020 election. So that's just the data that the team came up with. So I can't speak to Henrietta as far as that goes. So from a relational standpoint, again, Monroe County is not anywhere near the worst offenders. However, we are tied into the system where we have these discrepancies and we have these agencies that are not controlling what's going on and reconciling the numbers and allowing both all these irregular registrations to be entered in the system. And then these clone records to be generated from within the system, because only internally can that be done. It's not done by anybody signing up or applying for it. So that's an internal issue that's happening. So, and they're listed in their own database. It records that some of them are being voted, are using for vote. So how that happens, couldn't tell you exactly.
The other thing that happens again, so at the polling places, the data from the machines gets loaded. Now, it used to come in through the town clerk's offices. The county has since taken that over,
Mhm.
but they would upload the data from that. That's when you'd see percent precincts returning.
Yeah.
Again, there's typically, so we would have a clerk from each of the major parties there.
Yeah.
To double, essentially to safeguard. That data all gets put up on the site. So if somehow between that number. And in other words, I'm not clear how these numbers are getting inflated, how these clone records are voting. Because when they show up, when a person shows up to vote, the person at the book comes in and fills it in, checks, as they check them off the
Yeah.
list, they have to sign, they compare the signature, then they give them the ballot to vote.
Right.
And
right.
so they then compare the number of people who signed the book to the number of votes cast. And again, we're not seeing discrepancies there.
Mhm.
And I heard someone mention mail-in, and that's certainly a possibility, except again, those vote totals are counted and they keep track of the number of ballots that went out and the number of ballots that came back.
Mhm.
And you're not seeing a discrepancy there. And when you actually look at the mail-in votes, it's not to the percentages that you're talking here. So again, I understand, and I can't speak to New York City or anything like that.
Or maybe
or even
Rochester, because the
Buffalo,
num-
but
Yeah, I was
what's
saying,
it?
the numbers that I referred to could be from the city of Rochester. It may not be Henrietta at all, So in a sense, we may not be getting as injured as a lot of the rest of the state is, although with these numbers, and I have a few more numbers I'd like to show about how many votes and where those votes are being used, that you could make a strong case that we are being injured in terms of the weight of potential fraud that's hitting other areas of the state, which will affect us as citizens in terms of this, the state legislature and that kind of thing. How that's the effect that is probably most important to recognize right now. So understood. I worked the elections for a number of years, and I noticed a lot of good techniques and a lot of, Republican and Democrat signing off and everything. And things look pretty good from my standpoint. But these are the things that the state database itself is telling us. So there are a total of 1.25 million clones in the state system, statewide. Okay. And they're ongoing. There are certain trigger points to create these records. And they really cause a huge threat to future elections. They're in the system, they're being created. It's an internal thing. It's not voter fraud. There's election fraud going on here in the state system. And our website has a lot of information on that, on how these, the matrix that was discovered about how they're entered in the system, because they have their own sort of hidden order to where they're created and placed in the state database. So that's very alarming information. So what's the impact of these registrations? NYCA has determined that statewide 740,396 votes were cast by irregular registrations. That's roughly 9% of the statewide vote. And consider that doesn't include certain types of irregular registrations. And the team also analyzed how this would impact various legislative races, federal and state races. And that's on page, let's see. Page 8. And based on your criteria and how you view it, what they came up with was, and there was ineligible, votes from irregular registrations were found in all congressional districts at a pretty good number. Some certainly were more than others. My congressional district 25 was 25,000 irregular votes, which was 7% of the vote total. So that's just alarming. That's just crazy. But what they determined was that there was 95 statewide races that should not have been certified based on that, due to the margin of fraud of these irregular registrations being greater than the margin of victory. So there's two different levels of that. The more aggressive one was the 90, it impacted 95 races that should have been certified. And the less, I guess, aggressive stance would probably give you about half of that. I'm not sure the exact number for that. Basically, if you just removed, if you assumed that the winner, if you take away the votes from the winner, that would change the race, the results of the race. And that's a level that has been used in court before to determine what to do in that case. So even that would probably be anywhere from 30 to 40 races statewide were affected by these irregular registrations. And beyond that, the Secretary of State with their spreadsheet amended their results 18 times, the last being in June 2021. And in New York Citizens Audit's opinion is that some of those were pretty substantial changes that they did. So again, a little more evidence that there's something wrong with the system and how they're trying to, or maybe not trying to, reconcile their numbers. And the other thing is that if you look at the vote totals, the Secretary of State, the New York State Board of Election, and the county totals all vary from each other. And the minimum discrepancy is 19,000, roughly 19,000, and the maximum discrepancy is 338,000 for the vote total for that year. So who can tell who has the right numbers? There's a real lack of control, a real lack of auditing and self-policing. It's just not there. Again, and the state's response to various state officials, Attorney General, Secretary of State, FBI, we presented these findings to these entities, and so far we haven't heard back from any of them. The Secretary of State office just returned our presentation without any comment, which I think is a real slap in the face. I mean, think about it. What part of your life is it okay to be 4, 5, 6% off? We went to Wegmans every day and they overcharge us 5%. If we bought eggs and we got 11 instead of 12, I mean, what part of our life would you expect this kind of discrepancy between what it should be? Banks, it doesn't matter who you are, you audit to the penny. I can remember one situation maybe 25 years ago where a man in a computer department who was looking at the time sharing saw a 1 cent discrepancy, and it led to him discovering basically an espionage unit coming from Europe going through their computer systems into the Department of Defense. And that 1 cent was just a bad cover-up of the job he was doing in the time he was using on the computer. Oftentimes, a 1 cent discrepancy means there's a whole lot more than that. And that's typically what, auditing in a lot of professions and organizations do. They realize that even little discrepancies mean there's a whole lot more to that iceberg there. And what we've just discussed here, the discrepancies are a whole lot more than that. We're talking 4 or 5, 6% on something that should be basic and simple and straightforward. One person, one vote, So, this is the kind of thing that we just really should not tolerate. I don't know about you, but there is no reason in the world why votes cannot match, why people who are in these positions, let's say in the state, election, Board of Elections or whatever, in these positions being paid for and entrusted to safeguard every single vote, why they should be off this much, and why, when presented with reports saying, can you explain this, just ignore it or rebuff the effort from the citizens of the state. And if a group that's 1,000 strong, that's using their own data, it's assembled it in a professional manner, presented to them, if they can't be heard or listened to, what's the average Joe, you and I going to get if we see problems with the elections? So that is why we, this is a wake-up call. This is something that we should not tolerate. And we should be, the time of excuses and the time of just letting these percentages go by, of not getting answers, that's got to stop. This got to stop. There's no reason why we should accept that. So so basically, I just wanted to present the information to you. I would like to return back and just, the next meeting and read off a resolution that we have for the towns in the state. Because as a group, at this point, we've just taken the ball, whatever the next step needs to be, because we're concerned. The people in this group are just doing whatever we can to get out of our comfort zone, do different things, like stand up here in front of you guys tonight. But just take it to the next level, let people know, and see who joins this fight, because it's a real fight. And so what we're asking, you guys to do is just to consider this information. Again, like I said, we have a website, auditnewyork.com. It has a ton of data on there. It has this presentation expanded. The director of New York City Citizens Audit did a similar presentation that's longer, more complete, more entertaining. Probably, it's better than what I gave tonight. Okay. But we have information there. We have a presentation in Rochester in a few weeks. And so you're invited to come to that. But we will be asking, like we are in towns across the state, that as a board, you consider this resolution and consider signing that. Just putting your hand to say, hey, yes, we need an audit. At the very least, we need an audit, end-to-end audit of the state system, so we can have confidence again in our elections. So thank you for your time.
So just a couple things. One, as I spoke to you on the phone, as a scientist and engineer, I want to see the underlying data.
Mhm.
So this report is all summary, and it's not the data itself, right? This is somebody's conclusion about the data.
Yeah.
So if I could see you, that'd be great. Yep.
State voter registration data November 2022. There's actually a copy of it in there.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. The second thing that I'd like, if somebody has an answer to this step 4, so I'm on the verification method clones. A vote must be assigned to the replicated record by someone with official access. What does that mean? How do you assign a vote to someone?
Well, I think what it means, and I could be wrong about this, but I think what it means is that if you were to go in to vote and give them your name and, and all that, you would probably get one particular, you would be using one particular state, ID. But there may be other ways internally, whether it be mail-in ballot processing or maybe some other method where someone else could assign and use one of the clones. They're being used somehow. So, I mean, that's a potential.
Well, that's what I'd like to understand, because again, in-person, I'm not clear how that can be done in person voting.
Yeah.
So then the question is, if the only way to quote unquote assign a vote to a replicated record is by mail-in, then right there, you've essentially, I don't want to see that there's more votes cast by these records than there are mail-in, right? That says there's something wrong with the data, that there's something wrong with the analysis.
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't quite get.
So my point is, if they're saying that 70,000 illegal votes were cast by these clone records, and I'm just making a number up, right?
Okay.
But there were only 38,000 mail-in votes cast in that election. Then how were those other 32,000 votes cast?
Right.
That's what I want to understand. Well, my point is, when you look at the vote totals, if there were only 38,000, unless you can tell me how that other vote was assigned, is someone going to multiple polling locations? Except that, again, if it's by address and if they're on that record and they show up in that book, then in other words, how is it, if we're talking about that number, how is it that nobody notices that somebody's in there twice or somebody's in at the same address? Because it sounds like what you're saying is it's all the same voting records, just a different voter ID.
Well, I mean, it could be that, again, some of the parts of the state are egregious in a number of areas. And so they may be more susceptible to, the left hand not, the checks not being done properly. That's about all I can say to that. But I mean, otherwise, in a sense, that the bottom line is that they're on that database. They're recorded in there as having voted. So if there wasn't some method from which they voted, then they've got another serious problem. How are we having these utilities inside that's just marking off randomly people that voted on the main database? So either way, there's a problem that needs to be looked
So
at.
I can answer that. If their database and if it's not an official database and it's just trying to calculate numbers, if they've got these duplicate entries that somehow got in there, and it could be nefarious, it could be, believe me, as someone from the computer industry, you see non-nefarious stuff happen all the time just because of screw ups in how people code things.
Yeah.
So if what you're saying is that it's a duplicate record and most of the stuff matches, then if the data is being uploaded and doesn't have that state ID, but they're going by matching of the person's name, then it potentially, depending on how the software writing, could be checking both boxes, right? It checks the original and the clone. But if that's not included in the vote total, and this is another question I ask you, and if somebody out there knows this answer. So obviously for the town elections, it's only counting the votes within the town. It's all kept within the county, right? That stuff doesn't it gets reported out to the news, gets reported out to the totals, but nobody else is accumulating that data. Now, obviously, if for elections that span counties,
That's
each
what
county reports the data and then somebody amasses those numbers.
Mhm.
But if the numbers are at the percentages that you're talking about, I'm just not clear how a candidate hasn't said, well, wait a minute, I got 10,000 votes in Monroe County and 9,000 votes in Ontario County. How come I only have 16,000 and my opponent has an extra 3,000 over the sum? When the results are being reported, how is it that the candidates aren't seeing this? Because again, I can tell you as a candidate, we look at those numbers really closely, especially in the tight races.
I believe you, but in this case, you're not talking about votes being switched. You're talking about votes being entered in the system that don't
Either
belong
way,
there.
my point is if Monroe County reported 10,000 and when the state adds 3 counties together, it's showing more than 10,000 in Monroe County, I would notice.
But that's not what we're talking about here, because the problem is maybe 3 of those 10,000 in Monroe County were irregular votes, and however they were entered in the system, they were entered in the system. And so you're not going to
This
notice
is
a
what I'm telling you.
discrepancy.
There aren't just things entered into the system. It comes in through these voter counts. So that's what I understand. If you've got a way by which these are being entered into the system, show me where that's being introduced. That's what I want to understand.
Well, and that's why we want an official audit to take a look at it. But again, the proof is in the pudding. The state records themselves show these irregular registrations have votes to them. How that happened, if there's somebody that's pretty slick at vote fraud, because that's what we're talking about, well, then they're slick at vote fraud and it got in the system somehow. But the thing is that by having this corrupted, inflated voter registration database that should be pared down, it should be policed by law, and is not. Okay. The problem is that's in the computer industry, that's called a vulnerability. The vulnerability is there in spades, and it's being exploited as per the state's official voter data roll.
What I'm getting at though, is that database isn't where they total the votes from. The votes don't come from the database. And so you're saying that somehow they got in there. Again, I don't know why the state database is off. And I don't understand why they'd be showing some of these records as voted. But again, that's not how they're tabulated. They're tabulated at the county. And then those county levels are reported up. Now, if somebody knows something differently, if my understanding of the system is in error, educate me.
Mhm.
But again, as having been involved in this for 3 elections now, and paying close attention to it, does anyone else know of anything differently? Am I off here in how this system works? I have no idea. So anyway, like I said, I'd like to,
Mhm.
you know, I get the data and, you know, it's a nice slick presentation and I get all that, but I want to understand the data and thank you for this.
Sure.
I'll take a look at that. But, you know, the part that's missing, just because the New York State records are off does not mean that illegal votes are being cast.
Mhm.
That just means that their records are crap, which if you've done any work with the state, it wouldn't surprise you that some of the state records are off because they're off on a lot of things. If that's how the votes were being cast, that would be problematic. I'm not aware of a means to cast the vote via the state database.
But we need to find an answer, correct? We need to find a reason why there's so many irregular registrations in there, why they're listed as having voted. We need to find answers to that. We can't just sit there and hope that, oh, okay, we've got a cancer here on this part of my body, but it's probably not lethal. It's probably not going to really hurt me too much. No, there's a cancer there that should not be there. Just plain and simple. These records need to be cleaned up because there's no other system that we would tolerate this kind of maladministration or malfeasance. It's just none. And we're talking about our elections here. We're talking about our elections. So,
If I may, I'm not sure, we
oh,
don't.
and can I
have
just
any
say one more,
juris-
can I just say one more thing to see? And that is, in addition to that disc there, as I mentioned before, we are, the team can provide you with, basically, scripts on how to run, you know, when you have the database, how to run it to get the results that we got. So, you know, there's 21 million records and we can't chug along 21 million records everywhere we go and show people. But if
So
you,
this isn't then the underlying database. Okay.
so we can provide you not only that, but also with the scripts to run so you can get the same results we got. So we want to be totally transparent on that because we know this is alarming information. And we know that, you know, you may not want to take our word. And I think that's a really good thing to have a healthy skepticism, but, you know, and so kick the tires and keep on going and keep asking questions.
So I
Again,
mean, just to be clear, my skepticism isn't that corruption can occur or that there aren't problems with the state database.
mhm.
But for that to turn into illegal votes, I need to understand how that happens. And that's what's not clear to me. And then I will look at this database to see, you know, like I said, I'll take a look at it and try to understand what it is the database is being used for. And again, if it's
Mhm.
purely for statistic generation or something like that, and it's not used in an official record, then the question is, well, does it matter?
Yeah.
If it's being used in an official manner, then it should, then if there are irregularities, they should be cleaned up.
Mhm.
But that doesn't, again, necessarily mean that the elections are fraudulent or that there are a ton of illegal voting going on.
And if I may, we've been here for a considerable amount of time.
Okay, sorry.
So the town of Henrietta doesn't have any jurisdiction over any of this. What specifically is the ask here? Because this is not really within our control.
Right. Well, the ask is this, is to go back and take a look at that data. You can go on our website. There's a ton of information there, including basically this presentation done by our director. That'd be a great place to go to just really get a fuller picture of what I presented tonight. Or you can also take avail of the presentation we'll have in town and come there and ask questions of the director and other people that might be there. We really want to answer your questions because they're good questions. And so we just want you to be informed because, and then, it's on April 15th. At the Italian American Community Center. But we will become, I'll be coming back and I will be asking, giving you a chance to take a look at this data. And we'll be coming back to ask you, read out the resolution and ask you to sign it.
Well, I'll just make it clear. You give us a resolution in the board meeting night, we're not going to sign it.
And the reason for that is?
Because
We need-
by law, we have to have our resolutions out in advance and other stuff like that. And we need time to review it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to get us something, get it to us at least a week before the meeting.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't suggesting reading it and then having you sign it right away. Yeah, right, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm sorry, did I answer your question? Or there was a
I
comment?
think what you're basically asking is you're asking towns to sign on to a resolution that is stating what?
Basically, you know, they're asking 5 things and I don't remember what all 5 are, but the main one is asking for an end-to-end state audit of the system. Because we feel there's easily enough irregular data and places where the discrepancy among the state's own various different agencies about their own totals that should match and don't, that it basically screams, we need an audit here of the system before we do anything else and make more changes to the state election system and all that. We really need to get an audit and a full look at what's going on underneath the hood.
And have you been in communication with the Monroe County BOE commissioners?
And they have said,
I'm sorry, can we get the name and this person to jump on the microphone?
we need it for the minutes.
So my name is Larry DeMayo. I'm a Irondequoit resident. We are having a meeting on Friday at 4 o'clock with Lisa Soleil, the commissioner of the Board of Election, county commissioner. And we're going to actually talk about identity theft with her. So and our director of our audit group is presenting. Can I just sure. This is the presentation that happened April 15th, so
I'm going to go back to the microphone just so it's easier for them to pick you up on the minutes.
So our director will be presenting more about the state. If you have any questions of how the data was acquired and what pretty much she's on top of, the whole picture. So she'll be here. And, but as my colleague mentioned, we are, we can't just, sit and just, wait for things to fix themselves, because this is the 2020 election. We've already been through another cycle and nothing has happened. No one wants to look at the data, and it's important to review it. So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Out of curiosity, who's funding Audit New York?
What?
So this is all paid for from donations? Just introduce yourself.
Peter Cook, I am a Spencerport resident. I was the first one to approach the town board in Monroe County for my town. Really what the ask is here to maybe better answer your question is we ask you to stand behind us in solidarity and support of our efforts. We're not asking you to manipulate your position on any town board or any political position that you may hold, which really isn't political, it's business here for you guys. So if you feel that the data is in good standing, okay, you're asking all the right questions, Supervisor. So I appreciate that 100%. At the end of the day, if you feel that this is a fight that you want to stand behind, we're asking you to stand behind us because we are the ones leading this fight. And if you fully believe that we are in the right as we go after this goal of getting this end-to-end audit, that's what we're asking in this resolution. It is really just you guys standing behind us because your support means that much to us, because you are our local conduit to a lot of these issues and a lot of these things that us as normal citizens are not a part of.
Right. So I'll just say that standing behind that organization, it's going to be tough without knowing all the full stuff. The easier resolution might be, just asking for an audit, that type of stuff, because again, to essentially, at least I can't speak for the other board members, but before I would endorse a group like this, I'd have to do a ton of research on looking at this stuff. And I'm going to take some look at it. But, oh, by the way, I have a town to run. Right. So
I have a family to run.
I
Okay,
under-
it's my own job, so I understand you.
I understand, right? So, so like I said, one of the things that you might want to take a look at is rather than asking people to essentially endorse your group, keep it more generic and say, that you've demonstrated some potential irregularities, call for an audit, right? Because now it's not a question of asking a town board to back a group. Politics need not enter into it, right? It's a question of if we're seeing irregularities, let's understand why.
Yeah.
Right.
Understood. And just one more interjection on my own behalf. This is specific to me. I got involved in this group after I pulled that data. I had that data foiled and it was sent to me. I could not load it on Excel, as you may already be aware of. It's
You
too
cannot
large.
what?
You cannot load that on Excel. Don't try. It will
Okay.
not load it properly. I used an online database called Gigasheet. It loaded it up perfectly. I was able to sort it out and I can sort through the whole database just as you could with a standard Excel format.
What about like access?
I did not use that, so I only tried Excel.
Okay.
So feel free to.
No, I'm not saying
Go
Excel.
whatever.
I'm just saying, yeah, access.
But what really got me motivated to really start and speak with all of these fine people is the fact of the matter that I have been defrauded in this whole election scheme, and that happened in 2018. I've only been a registered voter since 2016. So my memory, first of all, is very good, but for only 8 years I've been voting. Okay, I should only have 4 records. I have 5. The 5th one that was made in my name happened in the primaries of 2018. I am not affiliated or registered with a party. Therefore, I cannot participate in primary elections. 2018 is a little caveat. There was a special election in that year with a different party. So they actually allowed non-registered party voters to vote in that line. I did not vote. I just confirmed that with the State Board of Elections today and Monroe County Board of Elections. They have no record of me ever being in a party, and they have no record of my request to change to be in a different party or take me out of a party. So, but again, they don't even have the proof because all of that records have been destroyed since then. So I'm looking at this as where I've been personally affected now, and that gives me a lot more motivation than maybe you. Okay, so it's important, and I urge you to scour this information to the best of your ability and come to some type of resolution personally before you take on something like we're approaching. We're going to move on whether we have your support or not. Okay, but we wanted to bring this to you because we do look to you. We look up to you. You are our voice.
So have any other municipalities passed a resolution? In New York State?
So Ogden, New York, the lawyer basically said this is not something we can sign on to, and we hear the same echoing speech that we really don't have a control over this issue. And that's why I brought up the fact that you are a commercial entity. You're taking care of a commercial aspect of this community, not anything political.
Commercial's not quite the right term, but
Understood, but you don't have
Municipal.
anything to do with the elections. You don't, okay? But you are affected by the results of those elections. And that's all I have to say.
right. So that's why I'm going, you may want to work on your resolution so that it's something that, again, it's not in support of you guys or exactly your data or anything like that, because again, for us to essentially put the town's weight behind that. So we as individuals might be willing to do that,
You have a
but
petition.
we as a town board, right, we have an obligation to verify a bunch of that stuff that becomes difficult. So like I said, look at it to say, can you make a more generic resolution or something that don't even necessarily write the resolution, you write that says, like write a letter that says a position or, like I said, maybe it's just calling for the audit. Because then it's up to then the towns can decide if they agree and want to call for the audit, they can basically write a resolution to urge the state lawmakers to call for an audit.
Yeah, that's
I
kind of,
appreciate that. That's
yeah.
great.
and I don't know if Bruce could just quickly speak to that because he's the Monroe County chapter, leader of NYCA. But
Sure.
to my knowledge, it's not like a blanket endorsement of NYCA. I think it's
Sure.
an endorsement to the fact of just having a resolution. I don't know, can you speak to that at all, Bruce?
A little. I didn't bring a copy with me. My name is Bruce Sprague. I live in Spencerport. the resolution basically is putting teeth behind, putting laws on the books to do audits on our election processes. There aren't any now. That's why there's nothing happening. Another process, another piece of that is to actually have
So
and-
just to take, I just want to jump in real quick there. Are you suggesting that the laws are being put in at the state assembly, or are you talking about that
State.
they're being done at the town?
the state, which will govern everything else. We want,
Right,
we want
okay.
laws to be. able
Right, but
to
my
do
point is, we
this,
can't pass a resolution
but you can
mandating the
support it.
state do it.
Can support it.
So maybe this gets into the language as to what a resolution is, so.
Yes, and I didn't bring a copy of that with me because we're not quite ready to do that with you all tonight. Another part of that is actually, we're looking at some patents to have instantaneous results to an individual voter. Because a lot of times what happens is these things get certified. They get certified, and then all of a sudden, after it's certified, then all of a sudden we find all these problems. Well, if there's an instantaneous way for you to go out and check your vote, you voted, you can go out and check that at the state level. That's what we want. We also want some laws on the books for people to be suffer some serious consequences for breaking these laws. There's a lot of laws being broken and nothing's happening to any of these people. And there is one more tenant on there, and I apologize. I don't remember it and I didn't bring it with me. But we just ask that you support those tenants on there to support getting laws on the books. Support us maybe getting some kind of technology. Banks do it all the time. You go out and charge something and on your phone, a few seconds later, you've got the charge. We know how to do it. We just need to implement it in the election systems. Thank you.
Yeah, I will just note though, one of the challenges you've got with that, if what you're saying is that somewhere in the officials, they're being fraudulent, then all they have to do is disable that notification and.
I don't say to have the answers. I just
Right.
know there's a lot of problems that are being addressed.
The challenge you've got is if the folks inside are corrupt to the core, there's unfortunately a way around most of that stuff. So it may or may help. And the other challenge you've got then too, in terms of so maybe just notifying that you voted. Yes. Saying what your vote was. Can't see that happening because that gets into the privacy of the
That's some of the
ability to
problem,
cast a
because we can't go back. and
private
look at it.
ballot.
I don't think anybody can really go back and look at their vote.
So other than they're the Scantron ballots and they sit and they get locked up and if they do a manual recount, they go out to those ballots. Now, what I can't do is I've got one filled in. I can't say, oh, this is yours. I don't know whose it is, but they're the ones that were entered into the machine.
Correct.
And the problem is if you've got a secret ballot system, there should be no way to go back and figure out which ballot you cast. Because if that capability is there, then it's no longer a secret ballot.
But verifying how you voted, isn't that a valid?
I don't know what you mean, but depends what you mean by how you voted.
Who you voted for? Can you call up the Board of Elections and say, can you tell me how
No,
I
this is
voted?
what I'm telling you. If they record who you voted for, it is no longer a secret ballot. So they can tell you that you voted. They can tell you voted in person and where you voted. They can tell you, was it early voting? Was it by mail, et cetera, and so forth? But they can't tell you who you voted for because that is in no way, nowhere recorded. That because if you record that, it is no longer a secret ballot. What happens when you vote, you put that Scantron in and it goes into a pile. And I can't tell the difference between mine in there and all the other people who voted at that same voting location.
Yeah.
The only way to tell is if only a single person votes at a voting location the entire election, which of course doesn't happen. So like I said, there's no way to tie that back. Unless we're willing to give up secret
Oh,
ballots.
no, I think I totally agree with you on that. Absolutely. And that's the same, but we need to have that security end to end that your vote does get in there and that mainly our vote is not corrupted by illegal votes that should not be in the system because
Right.
Because this is a systemic problem from the appearance of it. And it means that all our votes in that, like I mentioned, the congressional district 25 in 2020, there's 25,000 irregular votes cast in there. 7% of the votes were irregular. And then
Well,
everyone.
so again, hold on.
Yeah.
You're saying in the database reports 7,000, that doesn't mean those 7,000 votes were irregularly cast. It means in the database, the state database is showing 7,000, and this is assuming you've done your analysis correctly. You're saying the state database is showing 7,000 votes were, the records are irregular. It doesn't mean they were irregularly cast votes. Because again, it doesn't go out to the state database. It's done at the county.
Mhm.
The counties upload to the state.
Understood. And that,
That's where we got our data from on
Right.
October 21st, 2021. That's what all this is based on.
Sure.
that.
and so my point being, if for instance, that upload software is buggy, then when they upload the data and store it into the state database, it could be off. But when I look at the vote totals that are reported and manually checked and all this other stuff, the vote totals could be correct. But as far as who voted, that could be way off because of the upload system being wrong. Having someone who's worked on software that, so like you want to see databases that are horribly off, go look at mailing addresses. Because one minor change can sometimes there's a whole industry that just does artificial intelligence to try to match addresses. When you're looking at those size records, I can tell you, somebody from the computer industry, it is non-trivial. So, but that's not, again, how the votes, that's not what they count. They don't count what's in the state database. What happens is those machines give me vote totals. And then basically I take those vote totals and I sum those vote totals. And those are what get reported. That's where you see the number of votes and the percent precincts reporting and that type of stuff.
And they don't match.
Which don't match.
The counties don't match the state, the states.
You're saying the database counts, not the vote totals. I've not seen that the vote totals don't match.
Then what you're asking for is an audit. So are we.
Supervisor,
You're putting words in my mouth.
We want it torn apart, right down to the address of the person, everything. Look at it. Nobody will do that. That's what we're asking you to do, is support the fact that we want to audit our own systems they're in a bad way. They're in a bad way.
You believe they're in a bad way.
but Supervisor, if I may, this may be a conversation you'll want to take offline so
Sure.
that our department heads and things can be.
Sure.
Could I interject? I missed the name of that last speaker, standing away from the microphone. Could
In
I
the
get that
blue.
again?
You, yes. in
My
the
name
blue.
is Bruce Sprague. Bruce Sprague.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're not public speakers. We're just trying to get.
We're not either.
Understood.
I was never involved in politics till I first ran for office about 5 years ago. So.
Yeah. And if I could just, again, just close with this, echoing Bruce's words there. I mean, either way you look at it, there's serious information that's off, whether on the very super hopeful one end of the spectrum, the regular votes were not truly cast, but it just, but there's a bug in the system that made all these numbers cleanly to the state, which in my mind, of my computer experience, usually breaks are more obvious and they're not as massive and they get caught by somebody and they're addressed. But none of that stuff is the case here. So it could be, but I have a more likely feeling that that's not. And until we get an answer, which we deserve as citizens, because we are the ones paying the bills. They're supposed to be working for us. They're supposed to be working for us, doing their job correctly. So no matter which end of the spectrum this falls, there really should be an audit because we deserve better. It's just too crucial. We cannot leave the state of our election system and who runs our state up to this kind of, who knows. I hope it's actually okay in the long run. it's just, there's just too much at stake to kind of not do anything about as far as this is concerned. So thank you.
So one place we absolutely agree is there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed in the state system. And that's why you should vote for me for governor. No.
It would be an upgrade.
So, okay, any other public comment? Do we have any reports from the board?
Want me to go first?
Sure.
So the library, they have a Monday, March 27th, 6 to 7 PM in the community room. Our Voices Project, Racial and Social Justice Through Truth Telling. You can register and get more information for that online. And then also on Thursday, April 6th from 7 to 8 in the community room, Dilemma of Plastic Recycling through Color Henrietta Green. And basically the premise is that 10% of the plastic that we have is currently recycled and the rest is not. So that would be interesting just to see what you can and can't recycle. And then I have something from the Sustainability Committee. So there's a volunteer opportunity at the Tinker's Nature Park Saturday, April 1st at 9 AM. And they're asking you to join them as they begin the process of removing invasive common buckthorn shrubs from the woods at Tinker Park. Wear long sleeves and long pants to protect against thorns and possible exposure to ticks and poison ivy. Tools, gloves, safety glasses, earplugs, and refreshments will be provided. And this effort will help restore biodiversity to our beautiful park, benefiting birds, insects, and ultimately humans. So that's all I have.
Anything? Rick, go ahead.
Okay. The youth board is getting things in motion, actually finalizing things for the Youth Hall of Fame selection. Pictures are done, invites are out. If I'm not mistaken, they're in the newsletter also. This is going to be going out. There have been all the different roles that are assigned. We have a featured speaker, Leslie Zink Ward, who is the co-owner and operator of Love and Cup, local entrepreneur for us. And some upcoming events that are in motion. There is an Easter egg hunt at Tinker Nature Park on April 1st from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. It is open to all children preschool through grade 6. It starts at 1 PM for children ages 6 and under and 1:15 for children 7 and up. Register at henriettarec.org. The night before that, March 31st, there is a teen flashlight egg hunt open to students grades 6 through 9. There's a Red Cross blood drive on April 1st from 9 to 2 at the Recreation Center. You can register at redcrossblood.org. In the future, coming up in May, there is a Neighbor to Neighbor Celebration Cultures on Saturday, May 13th at the Rec Center. It's from 4:30 to 7:30, and it is open to the entire Henrietta community. The Recreation Department is currently putting together the Summer of 2023 brochure. It will be online the week of April 10th, and it will include registration information for the summer playground. Residents can register on April 17th and non-residents on April 24th, and printed copies are going to be available also in the office. Rec Department is currently looking for and accepting applications for summer camp counselors, program directors. Please call 359-2540 or email recreationcenter@henrietta.org. And Tinker Nature Park has been awarded a grant from the Rochester Museum and Science Center Community Eclipse Ambassador Program. They are going to be receiving support materials and 1 telescope to keep and $1,000 stipend to purchase other supplies for the eclipse event on April 8th, 2024. That's what I got.
I attended the fire commissioners meeting last week, and we have a couple of new pieces of equipment that are going to be coming online. They are out reviewing the specs and making sure it was put together and doing some training on that. And I remind my fellow board members that next Tuesday, we have the budget presentation from the school district on Tuesday, the 28th. It's with a little short dinner at 5:30 PM. They'll be presenting the 2023-2024 school district budget to the town board.
Great. I'll just want to chime in on the Neighbor to Neighbor Celebration of Cultures. That's being done in cooperation. It's the town, it's the Rush Henrietta Central School District, the Interfaith Council, or excuse me, Interfaith League and Interracial Clergy Council. So a lot of groups involved in pulling that off. there's going to be community information, tables, foods, games, live music, children's activities. Henrietta is one of the most diverse towns in the county. And, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people always think that Spanish is the second most native language spoken, especially amongst immigrants, new Americans, refugees. It's not in Henrietta. Nepali is, and Arabic is second, and I believe Spanish is third or fourth. So it's we're gonna have a bunch of foods from a number of the different cultures, and like I said, a whole bunch of programming and fun stuff. So something we're trying for the first time, and hopefully it goes off well, and becomes a regular staple in the long list of great events that our Parks and Rec department put on every year. So just wanted to give a special shout out to that. We're also hiring seasonal employees for the Department of Public Works, and we have a couple openings for our highway department. If you know anybody who is a commercial drive, you know, has a commercial driver's license or an interest in getting one. So if nothing else, you go onto our website, or if nothing else, contact me at supervisor@henrietta.org. So thank you very much. Anything else? And can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.